Okay. Okay, we just had Lady William's turn. Then Anna Lee. Lady William had to give up his diary. Guess what he's named for? And then Anna Lee, her certificate of adoption. And then Anna Lee declared little Ingrid had to give up her crutches. Her new crutches. She would have to use her old ones. The meeting was gathering momentum, and our enthusiasm was boundless when little Ingrid, quite unperturbed, whispered that Henrik was going to have to bring the snake in formaldehyde. Chapter 8. Sorry, I have a lot of mucus in my mouth right now. Chapter 8. In the biology room, there were 6 things worth looking at. The skeleton, we called Mr. Hansen. The half-man with the detachable organs. A wall poster detailing the female reproductive organs. A dried out and slightly cracked human skull, referred to as Hamlet's handful. A stuffed weasel, and the snake in formaldehyde. Of these, the snake in formaldehyde was by far the most interesting. And little Ingrid's scheme was for this reason no less than brilliant. Henrik didn't agree. Not least because the snake was a cobra that had cost his father a great deal of time, much correspondence, and an endless amount of negotiations to secure for the school's collection. Another thing about the snake was that it was disgusting and brought shivers to the spine every time you happened to look at it. With its prehistoric patterns and closely interlocking scales, the body of the snake lay curled in an endless spiral at the bottom of its jar. The head raised keenly. Its jagged neck splayed out as though in rage, and as though at any moment the creature was going to discharge its paralyzing venom from between its hissing, flesh-pink jaws. No one ever touched the jar voluntarily. Unless, that is, they could get at least 10 kroner for doing so. Henrik stubbornly and stupidly maintained that the snake in formaldehyde didn't belong on the heap of meaning. However, it helped some that Hussein held the jar with the snake up above Henrik's head at recess. Otto was paying the 10 kroner, and threatened to smash it against his skull if Henrik didn't give the snake up for the heap. Just a little sip. Little hit. For reference, 10 kroner is roughly $1.56 USD or something. Thank you, Velix. You know, lunch money. Some pocket change. The rest of us were just as impatient, insisting that it had to be done right away. We needed to get finished so we could shut Pierre Anton up once and for all. The plums were well ripened now, and Pierre Anton was spitting sticky plum stones at us all the while that he was hollering his stuff. "How come you girls want to be dating?" he'd shouted that same morning as I passed by Terringvay 25, arm in arm with Ursula Marie. "First you fall in love, then you start dating, then you fall out of love, and then you split up again." "Shut it, Pierre Anton," Ursula Marie hollered back at the top of her lungs. Maybe she felt especially stung, because we'd just been talking about Jan Johann. And this matter of the feelings that we just didn't seem to be able to rein in or fathom. Pierre Anton laughed and went on in a more gentle tone. "And that's the way it goes. Time and time again. Right until you grow so tired of all of that repetition, you just decide to make like the one who happens to be the closest by is the one and only. What a waste of effort." "Just shut up, will you?" I yelled and started running. Although I wasn't dating and had no idea who I'd pick if I had to choose there and then, I certainly wanted to, and soon. There was no way I was going to let Pierre Anton ruin love for me before it even got started. Ursula Marie and I ran the entire rest of the way to school, in a mood worse than we could ever recall being in at one and the same time. It didn't even cheer us up when Pretty Rosa reminded us that Pierre Anton had once dated Sophie for a fortnight, and that they had even kissed before it ended again, and that Sophie had then gone on to date Sebastian, while Pierre Anton had gotten together with Laura. That didn't even cheer me up. That was a story that sounded a bit too much like something I didn't want to hear. And maybe a bit too much like what Pierre Anton himself had said. Interview with a Vampire vibes, actually. Okay, I don't know exactly when it was that Henrik saw his chance to steal the snake from the biology room, or how he managed to get it to the sawmill without being seen. I only know that Dennis and Richard helped him, and that when the snake rolled... Oh god, I only know that Dennis and Richard helped him, and that the snake rolled disgustingly, like it was alive, when they lifted it up and placed it on top of the heap. Oscar Little didn't much like it either. The hamster squealed pathetically and cowered in the far corner of its cage. And Gerda cried and told them to wrap newspaper around the snake, so we didn't all have to see. But Oscar Little's squealing made the snake in formaldehyde even more meaningful. And none of us would agree to have it packed away. Instead, we turned our gaze expectantly to Henrik. Chapter 9. Oh, by the way, you were right. Ah. Or not. Ah. Have you read slam poetry? Not really. I mean, yes. Not on stream. I really want to know how this ends. Yeah, me too. Fuck. I spilled water on it. Henrik was a real butter-up. He asked for Otto's boxing gloves. The only fun was that Otto actually was rather fond of his boxing gloves, and that they were red to match the Dannebrog. Otto, on the other hand, spent a whole 8 days thinking before making up his mind. Had it not been Otto, and had his scheme not been most sublime, and if his scheme had not been so sublime, we would all have gotten mad at him. For while he was doing his thinking, we again became aware of Pierre Anton's hollering up there in the plum tree. You go to school to get a job, and you get a job to take time off to do nothing. Why not do nothing to begin with? He shouted and spat a plum stone at us. It was like the heap of meaning began shrinking. It was like the heap of meaning began shrinking and losing some of the meaning, and the thought was unbearable. Just you wait and see, I yelled as loud as I could, dodging a squashy plum that came flying. There's nothing to wait for, Pierre Anton hollered back condescendingly. And there's nothing at all worth seeing. And the longer you wait, the less there'll be. I covered my ears and hurried the rest of the way to school. But there was no comfort to be found at school that day. The teachers were cross with us. They had a pretty good idea it was our class that was behind the disappearance of the snake in formaldehyde. How could Henrik have been so dumb as to snatch it right after one of our biology lessons? We all had to stay behind an hour every day after school until we revealed what we'd done with it. Everyone, that is, except for Henrik. For Henrik's father, the biology teacher, was sure it couldn't have been Henrik. Butter up, little Henrik Butter Up. How we cursed him and looked forward to the day the heap was finished. And Pierre Anton had seen it, and we could tell it like it was, so little Henrik Butter Up could get what was coming to him. In the meantime, he just went strutting around the place. Strutting, trotting, rutting. At least until huge Hans got his hands on him and slapped his ears and cheeks so that he had to beg for mercy. And was granted it because his father, in the meantime, had retracted and repealed our detention. The lower cheeks. Get ready to catch these Hans. All right. Elise's baby brother. Otto finally announced. And it was like a gust of wind passed through the sawmill. It was afternoon. We were sitting at the foot of the heap of meaning, and we all knew what it entailed. What Otto was saying. Elise's baby brother had died when he was only 2 years old. And Elise's baby brother was buried in the churchyard up on the hill. What Otto was saying meant that we had to dig up the coffin containing Elise's baby brother and lug it down the hill all the way out to the sawmill and the heap of meaning. And it had to be done under cover of darkness if we were to pull it off without being found out. We looked at Elise. Maybe we were hoping she would say something that would make the venture impossible. Elise said nothing. Her baby brother had been sick from the time he was born to the time he died. And in all that time, Elise's parents had done nothing but care for him, while Elise hung out on the streets and got poor grades and became bad company before eventually going to live with her grandparents. Until, that is, her baby brother died 6 months ago. And Elise moved back home with her parents again. I don't think Elise was too sad about her baby brother being dead. And I don't think she was too sad that he was going on to the heap of meaning. I think Elise was more afraid of her parents than of us. And that was why, after a long silence, she said, "We can't." "Of course we can," Otto replied. "No, we mustn't." Elise wrinkled her eyebrows. Her brow. Elise wrinkled her brow. "Must has nothing to do with it. We're doing it. And that's that." "But it's sacrilege," protested Holy Carl. And it was he more than Elise who was objecting. "We'll be invoking the wrath of God," he explained. "The dead are to rest in peace." Peace, more peace, rest in peace. Holy Carl's objections were in vain. "It's going to take 6 of us," Otto declared, undaunted. 4 taking turns to dig and 2 to keep lookout. We looked at one another. There were no volunteers. "We'll draw lots," Otto said. There was a long discussion about how to make the draw. Eventually, we agreed on drawing cards. The 4 who drew the highest cards were going to the churchyard. 4 because Otto and Elise obviously had to be among the 6. I offered to run home and get a deck of cards, but time was getting on, so we decided to put it off until the next day. On the bright side, the excavation itself would be done and over with by the following evening, barring rain. I've always liked a game of cards, and I've always had lots of different decks. As soon as dinner was over, I went into my room, closed the door, and took out all my playing cards. There were the classical ones in blue and red, but it wasn't going to be them. Then there were the miniature decks, which didn't seem right either. And it couldn't be the ones with the horses' heads on the back, or the ones with the clowns, or the ones where the Jackson Kings looked like Arab sultans. Eventually, there was only one deck left. But this one seemed fitting, for the reverse side was black and edged with a thin gilt line. And since they had almost never been used, the gilt edging was fully intact and still shiny. These were the ones. I put away the remaining decks and spread out the gilt-edged playing cards on my desk. I examined each carefully. There was something ominous about them. Not just the face cards, with the witch-like queen, and the king with his piercing eyes. And not just the way too black spades, and the claw-like clubs, but also the blue-red diamonds and hearts. That most of all made me think about exactly what I didn't want to think about. Or maybe I was just starting to get a little rickety at the thought of digging up Emil's coffin. Up, down, and buckets full of something I didn't want to think about. There were two options. Either I could remove a deuce and hide it away in my pocket, and then somehow swap the card I drew tomorrow with the deuce. Or I could mark one of the deuces in such a way that I'd be able to pick it out when it was my turn to draw, and in a way no one else would notice. Even though I didn't know how I was going to mark the card without it being noticeable, I chose the second option. If anyone decided to count the cards before drawing lots, I'd be found out there and then. The safest thing was to mark them. After long deliberation, I scraped away the gilt edge on all four corners of the 2 of spades. To be on the safe side, I then did the same on the 3 remaining deuces. It looked like random wear and tear. I was on the safe side now. It wouldn't be me digging up Elise's baby brother in the middle of the night.